Should be working now. Hope you guys are doing okay. Give me a second. We need to get something to drink. Sorry it took so long to get started. Welcome everybody to the Raven's Roost. I am Raven, and tonight we are doing a reading stream. I know it's not Monday, but I wanted to do it tonight for two reasons. The first being last Monday we had to abandon the reading stream early because our internet was just terrible. And the second reason being I will not be here this Monday. This coming Monday, I'm going back home to see my mom and dad and their new puppy named Della. And I'm going to be there for a dental appointment for one thing, but I'm also going to be there to help them move some furniture around and also housebreak the new puppy, so that's going to be awesome. Really excited for that. It's going to be great. But because I'll be gone Monday night, I will not be here to do a reading stream. I don't have the equipment at my mom and dad's house to do a stream like that. My brother will be doing Dungeons and Dragons that night, so he won't be able to cover for me, so we're just not going to be able to do anything. Tuesday, if I don't work, I may do something Tuesday for you guys, because I should be back Tuesday night. But anyway, that is the reason I'm doing it tonight. Della, as in dog. It's Della. Actually, I might be able to show you guys a picture of her. If I pull this up, actually, I might be able... Actually, you know what? Tell you what. I will post a picture of Della on Discord, on the Discord page later. But anyway. Alright, so last time we were reading, before the internet just kind of quit, we managed to read through the next two chapters of Helping Hands. We did not get through the Tale of Tomiki. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to read two short stories that I've written, and then we're going to read the next two chapters of the Tale of Tomiki, because I now have both done. And then I will read Monster Club, and I'll read Reanimated, and that'll do it for tonight, okay? So let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into it. Let's start with the first short story. And as usual, I like to put an image up. So let me put an image up for you guys to see what we're reading. Hannah cannot be with us tonight, unfortunately. I wish she could be, but she cannot. 1 second, I will pull up the image. I believe I still have it. If I do not, we'll just go without. Okay, there it is. Alright. Oh, wait, actually, no, hold on. I gotta take that down. Never mind, I remembered she didn't want me sharing that image all over the place just yet, so we're not gonna use that. My fault. Okay, we won't use a picture for this one. Alright, so anyway, the story is called Caitlin Kane, A Birthday Gift. Some of you may remember that some time ago I read a short story about it was a Warhammer 40k story, and if you are familiar with Warhammer 40k stories, you may be familiar with Commissar Caiaphas Kane. If you don't know the story, Commissar Caiaphas Kane is a commissar in the Imperium of Man, and he is regaled as a hero of the Imperium, except deep down, unknown to everyone else, he's a coward and self-centered rogue, and basically does everything he can to stay alive, but he always blunders into success, and because of that, people assume that he's this big hero. He also has a romantic and professional affiliation with an inquisitor of the Imperium named Amberly Vale. I have been a longtime fan of the series. Hannah has only recently gotten into it, but she fell in love with the character of Commissar Kane, and she wanted to create an ideal daughter of Kane and Amberly. I wrote her a short story where Kane meets his daughter when she's a child, and then I wrote for Hannah a short story where Caitlin, that's his daughter's name, Caitlin Kane, has grown up into an Inquisitor herself. So, this story is that short story called Caitlin Kane, A Birthday Gift, and it is a gift for Hannah for her birthday. So I will read you the story of Caitlin Kane, the Inquisitor. I'm sorry there's no picture, but let's get into it. Something I've come to learn in my modest career as an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos is that most citizens of the Imperium don't know or care about what Ordo you belong to, or that you're only interested in getting information and protecting the Imperium from total damnation and oblivion. Not every Inquisitor is a crazed member of the Ordo Hereticus ready to scream heretic at the first fellow who scratches his arse in the wrong way, but most citizens don't know this, or care. All they know is that I'm an Inquisitor, and that fact alone means I'm more terrifying to them than the very enemy I've arrived to contend with. Mother used to tell me when I was little that this was simply how it often went for Inquisitors. I would have to get used to that, and yet, all at the same time, I could not shake the sensation of wrongness in their behavior towards me. There was fear upon seeing my inquisitorial seal, but also reverence when they heard my name. This duality was strange to me. I wasn't sure if I liked it.
Madam Inquisitor.
I turned my attention to the man behind me, a well-built fellow with a full head of long black hair, slightly tanned skin, and a rugged disposition. His beard hid a sizable scar on his right cheek, which I'd learned he'd acquired from fighting a Khornate cultist in melee combat. This was Captain Bargith, the naval officer in charge of this frigate. I'd commandeered it when I'd received an astropathic message of note that couldn't be ignored. A contact I had among the rogue traders had informed me of the potential of a gene-stealer infestation on the planet Malvin. This couldn't be ignored, of course, least of all by the Ordo Xenos. Captain Bargith had been more than accommodating to me and my associates, at least until I could acquire my personal craft again, and yet he was constantly on edge. I know some Inquisitors like to make people nervous. I just find it very tiresome. What is it, Captain?
We've made orbit at Malvin, and I was just wondering if you'd, care to embark yet?
Trying to get me off the ship quickly, are you? I teased. As usual, my joke went the wrong way.
No, not at all. It is a pleasure having you, Madam Inquisitor, aboard. I wouldn't dream of...
Relax, Captain. I'm pulling your leg, I sighed, turning to face him at last. I'll take a shuttle down with my savant.
Very good, ma'am.
I walked past him, and I could see him tensing up as I moved. Captain.
Ma'am?
You run a very fine ship. Let no one tell you otherwise.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm flattered.
He cried and saluted fast. I smiled as I walked by. As my father would say, a little encouraging word here and there can go a long way with most people. Although in his case it had a far different impact. He was, after all, Caiaphas Cain. My family situation is not quite what you would call normal. Under normal circumstances, Inquisitors are chosen early from the Schola Progenium, or found as potential candidates from bizarre locations. Few get into the business by familial relations. I was an exception. My mother was the esteemed Amberley Vale of the Ordo Xenos, while my father was the bloody hero of the Imperium, Caiaphas Cain, the liberator of Perlia, the hero of Kephia, the man who single-handedly stopped a Tau uprising on Gravelax, and on and on. One might think that, with such a pedigree, I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. But the truth, though, as with so many things, is much more complicated. My mother kept me close to her side while I was still in bloomers, ensuring that I saw firsthand what it was she did. I met my father shortly after, much to his surprise. I was later to learn that my father, though he did love me, wanted me far away from him for my own good. If it were discovered that I was the product of a hero like him, it would ruin what chances I had at a semi-normal life. He also knew that if it were discovered I was the daughter of an Inquisitor, that would only further complicate matters. Plus, it would mean revealing Cain, the hero, had slept with an Inquisitor, something that would be about as scandalous and galaxy-shattering as the 14th Black Crusade. And Emperor help us should that ever happen, as my father would say. I don't resent Father for this. If anything, I admire him for the sacrifice he made for my sake, and yet I still just wanted to know him better. My mother left me at the Schola and pulled my strings to ensure I was accepted into the ranks of the Inquisition to follow in her footsteps. She knew it was dangerous to be an Inquisitor, but she also knew it was one of the only stations in all the Imperium where one sees the galaxy in a more clear and broad picture. As she put it to me, no daughter of mine will be raised a fool. And so there you have it.
I'm telling you again, ma'am, that's the whole situation. It's highly unlikely to be the work of gene stealers.
My savant, Austin Ishigami, said. Austin was a good man, Tall and lanky, with arms and legs that seemed designed for a human with a torso a tad larger, he kept his hands tucked in his pockets or wrapped around a data slate most of the time, his dark brown hair long and covering part of his eye. He had a tired expression most of the time and spoke softly and low, as if afraid someone would overhear him, and he just couldn't bear the thought. The best thing about him, though, was his low profile. He had this miraculous ability to always seem to disappear and reappear without anyone ever seeming to notice him going or leaving. I at first wondered if he'd spent any time with the Raven Guard while he was with the Administratum, but later put it down to the fact that he simply lacks any outgoing personality traits. What he lacks in social skills, he makes up for in his knowledge on Xenos and their behavior. He was a former consultant to an Ordo Dialogus on Xeno customs, language, and thought processes. As he traveled extensively with the Administratum to conduct raids and inquiries into Xeno-infested territories, I was fortunate to find him and make sure of his particular talents. Yes, you said previously, and yet the case reports are stating the fact that gene stealers are involved. Do you doubt the word of an Inquisitor?
No, ma'am, he grumbled. I don't doubt your word, but I'll always doubt the bureaucratic eggheads who run things in the archives office in the Administratum.
Oh, well, that much I couldn't fault him for. We were talking through the primary manner of the planetary governor of Malvern named Bryson Reinhardt. I had instructed him to debrief me in person on the situation, and seeing as I was an Inquisitor, he lacked the bravery to say no. I was listening to Austin as we walked, his eyes at his feet, showing he was thinking hard about something. Very well, then, why don't you think it's a gene stealer infestation?
The pattern's all wrong, he explained. Gene stealers don't act out until they've gained enough numbers to become a threat, or because they've called in the Hive Fleet. But the warp currents aren't actually turbulent right now, meaning no Hive Fleet is moving into range. Not only that, but we'd see more examples of civil unrest and problems within the local Arbites and other law enforcements. But there have been few, if any, civil riots or outcries.
Then how do you explain the mutilated bodies found that bear similar damage to a gene stealer cult? I pointed out. We'd been sent photographs and images of what appeared to be humans flayed to pieces by taloned hands, and a few dead bodies that definitely were mutated like gene stealer hybrids. There was no question to what they were.
I'm not saying there aren't gene stealers on planet. I'm saying they're not responsible for the disappearing civilians on Melvin, he shrugged.
And what's your proof?
The dead mutants, he answered, stopping in his tracks and forcing me to stop as well. Why were there pictures of dead gene stealer mutants among the dead civilians discovered? A normal human without weapons couldn't overpower a gene stealer hybrid.
That was also a good point. The civilians who had been going missing on planet were certainly not soldiers or police, and the hybrids had been killed as well. Mere civilians wouldn't have been a match. Perhaps my socially awkward savant had made a better point than I'd realized, and I again thanked the Golden Throne for his presence. Very well then, Ishigami, then what do you propose did it? I asked.
I'd rather not say.
He fidgeted a little and bit his lower lip in a normal method that I knew to mean he was very sure of what it was, but was terrified to say it. That also didn't surprise me. The poor boy had a severe case of PTSD after surviving a few too many close encounters with Dark Eldar, Necrons, and Tyranids. I imagine just thinking about what was behind killing these monsters was enough to have him wetting his pants. Well, could you perhaps give me a hint, then?
If I'm right, we need to exterminatus the planet.
Now that had me spooked. Exterminatus was the final and last resort solution in dealing with an alien taint. It was only used in the event that a planet was all but lost to the Imperium, and our only recourse was to destroy everything on it. Only a handful had such authority to issue that, and Inquisitors were that handful. I didn't like the idea of condemning the whole damned world to that fate, but what did Austin Ishigami fear was lurking on Melvin? Would you care to share with the rest of the class? I hissed.
Necrons.
Of course, the idea of a Necron tomb world below the surface of Melvin was nothing short of ridiculous. So, as was the obvious result, we found ourselves searching the catacombs of the cities, near the sites of the disappearances. I was not alone, of course. I had Ishigami with me, who was shaking like a clog boy who hadn't any oil in a week, and of course I was joined by some requisitioned heavy troopers from the 12th Penal Legion. There were 4 in total, all strong, capable, and 100% expendable, which is how I liked them. All 4 were tall and built, like brick walls, their lasguns held at alert over their shoulders. They were trained on every dark crevice and entryway they could see, and a good thing, too, they'd need every ounce of alertness for what we were dealing with. They didn't know that, though. They were under the impression we were hunting Tyranids, and I wanted it kept that way. Tyranids were biological, and they could bleed. Necrons were a different breed of beast altogether. I recall my father telling me when I was young of all the horrors he'd faced and bested in his career, but the one that made him squirm the most were the Necrons. He told me of the horrors of these unfeeling nightmares of metal, but I'd always dismissed his stories. He was the hero of the Imperium. He wasn't afraid of anything, so surely he was just playing games with me and trying to tell scary stories to my little self. And then I met them. And now I know my father meant every word, and his fear was as real as the Emperor himself. Deep down, I was honestly hoping that Ishigami was wrong, that this wasn't a case of Necrons. And so far, things were looking good. We saw no sign of the typical indicators, no black walls of metal with green glowing hieroglyphs, no plasma burns on the walls, only the occasional vermin running around. Can we go back now, ma'am? Ishigami whispered. Let's just call in an Astartes chapter and have them clean this place out. Ishigami, would you relax? I snapped. We can't call in Astartes reinforcements for something as trivial as a minor gene stealer infestation. But it's not just gene stealers. We haven't found evidence of that yet, I retorted. Until I see evidence that there are Necrons on planet, we treat this for what it appears to be. Ishigami gulped at that and followed jitterily. I had to admit I was starting to feel the same trepidation. I was hoping we'd reach the end of our adventure without finding anything, and at last, something happened. The soldier in front of me froze and held up his hand. Hold! We found something! He moved forward swiftly with his unit and dropped into a kneeling position. There was something on the ground in front of him. A body, human from the shape. Madam Inquisitor, you may want to see this. I nodded and approached. What is it? I asked. The question was not necessary. I saw what it was. The body was only partly human. One of the arms was far larger and had more fingers than it was supposed to, and its left leg looked mostly muscled. This was a gene stealer hybrid, but that wasn't what scared me. Where's its skin? The soldier asked. The horror at my feet was not only dead, it had been skinned. Its hide was completely missing. Its muscles and tendrils on full display as its skin was shorn off like a peeled fruit, and my memory snapped back to the things my father had told me about certain Necrons known as flayed ones who shear the skin from their victims and wear them like some mocking parody, as if wearing the skin of the living will make them feel more alive somehow. The surgical precision of the slicing wasn't done by the claws of a tyrannid, and there was only one kind of monster I knew of that could do this. Oh, frack, I hissed. Contact! That was the last word of the first soldier, where his final sound was a scream, and green light engulfed his body and melted him down to nothing. Every soldier in the unit opened fire on the spot, where the Gauss flare came from. I turned and yanked out my own bolt pistol to see 5 mechanical horrors marching down the alley. Aiming their nightmarish weapons at us, the firestorm began. I ducked down behind a hunk of stone and fired at the Necrons marching ever onward. One of them, to my disgust, was indeed adorned in the skin of at least 2 humans, like a cowl across its body. I was careful to aim for its ugly skull-like face. It took the shots with a loud gonging noise and then collapsed, only to suddenly fade away in a flare of green light. To where one could only speculate. The soldiers with me tried to rally and return fire, but the Necrons were swift in executing them one after another. There was too little cover here for them all to get behind it, and soon I was watching my men get blown to bloody mist. Ishigami, we're pulling back, I shouted. Yes, ma'am, he screamed, already running to the surface. The Necrons followed quickly, but I fired back at them with each few steps, trying to keep them pinned down. I didn't know how many I hit, but I couldn't stop running to check. Without backup, fighting a squad of these things was nothing short of suicidal. I ran until my legs thought they would rip off my hips, but ran on I did. I could see light ahead, and a thought occurred to me. Ishigami, down! Ishigami was cowardly, but he was obedient. Instantly, he threw himself to the ground, and I jumped too, firing once at the ceiling above our head. The stone masonry began to crumble and fall behind us as stones collapsed. I fired again and again, keeping the stones falling, sealing off the tunnel into the Undercity. I looked back to see if the Necrons were still pursuing, but to my surprise, I didn't see them. Had we outrun them? Not likely. Even if we had, that barrier wouldn't hold them long. Ishigami was right, as much as I hated to admit it. The Astartes were needed here, and fast. If they couldn't stop the cancer below the city, then Exterminatus really was the only other option. Can I say, I told you so? Ishigami asked, struggling to catch his breath. You do it, and I'll have you summarily executed, I gasped, falling backwards and groaning. Father, I get it. What was that, ma'am? Nothing, I answered. Get me a line to the governor. And then I'm calling the nearest Astarte ships for immediate purging of this city. Father wouldn't have had it any other way. Well, no. He'd be sure to ask for a cup of tea in the meantime. I grinned at the thought, despite myself. Seeing my father's smiling face in my mind was enough to push the bowel-clenching terror I just experienced away from my thoughts. Father really was the hero of the Imperium, fighting away all the terrors I could possibly think up. All right. Well, that was the first story of the night, Caitlin Kane. Next up, I'm going to try to add an image here. Give me a second, I need to get the image. Just a minute, guys. I need to find the picture so that you all have context for what we're doing. Alright. Apparently that won't work. I'm a little sad about that. Looks like we'll have to go without an image again. Oh well. Raven Knight, what's a Necron? So, Necrons are one of the races in Warhammer 40k. I'll pull up an image. Go ahead and show you guys since you're interested. So that's what a Necron is. The Necrons are basically a race of aliens that are basically fully robotic and cybernetic in origin. They cannot feel pain or fear or anything like that. And they basically exist in tomb worlds, usually buried deep underneath normal civilizations and cities. When they awaken from stasis, they try to destroy all life on the planet because they consider the planet their home and we are all invaders. They're very hard to put down, very dangerous, and one of the worst enemies that mankind can face. So now you know. Alright, now, on to the next story. The next story is an Edenite story. If you guys don't remember, I am doing an anthology series called the Edenite Chronicles. What is the Edenite Chronicles? Essentially, it works like this. Mankind has discovered in the Bermuda Triangle a large portal to another alternate world called Eden. There are no humans in Eden. They call us Terrans. In Eden, there are only fantasy races and monsters, kind of like what you'd see in Dungeons and Dragons or a fantasy novel. Now, at first, war looked like it was going to break out, but after a little bit of time, diplomacy has begun, and now Edenites, as they're called, have been crossing into Terra, and Terrans, that's what we're called, have been crossing into Eden to kind of collaborate and learn and work with each other. And this anthology series is basically me telling various stories about Edenites and Terrans meeting and working together. I've told a story about a human man dating a Lamia. I've told a story about a Terran going to Eden and meeting the queen of the bee people. I've told a story about a young girl getting to interview the emperor of the Elvish Empire. There have been a lot of stories, and I've read a lot of them on this channel. Raven, do the Necrons have a ruler or not? They have various rulers. Like they have various kings and leaders. Necrons who didn't lose their souls or their minds, like Trazyn the Infinite or the Silent King come to mind. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So we're going to be reading this Edenite Chronicle story called The Diplomacy of Warriors. So let's get started. I yawned, feeling the weight of the day bearing down on my shoulders. I wanted nothing more than to go inside, kick off my shoes, and just fall asleep. I didn't even need to get out of my suit. I'd probably just have to put it back on in the morning anyway. I felt like I was always working these days, especially with the new Edenite bills and laws being passed. I was an aide to one of the ambassadors who was working on the bills, and I've been run ragged for the last several days trying to keep up with every new development or idea that went through that old fool's mind. It made me sick of Eden at this point, and I'd only been there once. Eden. The name given to that other world beyond ours. 9 years ago, a rift was discovered in the Bermuda Triangle that led to an alternative reality that there were no humans there, and technology was still trapped in the Dark Ages. The creatures that there were all races and specimens that once existed only in fantasy novels and Dungeons and Dragons games. War seemed likely, but fortunately diplomacy resulted instead. Now there were efforts for mutual cooperation and travel between the two worlds, and as an aide to an ambassador to America, there were several Edenites trying to discuss possible trade deals, travel plans, and a law adjustment. And of course, I had to deal with a lot of it. I finally parked my car at my house and got out to walk to the door. As I approached the door, though, I looked to see I wasn't alone there. There were two very tall figures at the front. Both were wearing hoods over their heads, but other than that, their attire was quite different. The taller of the two was huge, broad, with massive limbs like tree trunks. He wore clothes that seemed to be made from animal furs and hides, and I could smell him from the end of the driveway. The one next to him was more slim, but no less broad in the shoulders. This one wore a leather jacket and jeans as if they were trying to pass as human, but I had no doubt neither were. As they turned to see me, I could see I was correct. Both had green skins and tusks jutting from their lower lips. The bigger one had a black beard and a large gut with a chip in and large tusks with a chip in the left one. He had a scar over one eye, and he looked rather old with gray hairs in his beard. The other was feminine, with shorter tusks and long black hair like the man's. Husband and wife, perhaps? I couldn't be sure, but they were definitely orcs. I hadn't had the chance to meet any before. The girl stepped forward as I approached. "Excuse," she said in a very thick and broken accent. "Forgive this one, but you is Terran Daniel Blackston." I stiffened a bit. Terran was the term Edenites used for humans, since they referred to our world as Terra. Her style of speech was poor, but it was clear she was at least able to speak some English. I wasn't aware orcs had even a passing knowledge of our language, so that did surprise me. Yes, I am. How can I help you?" "Ah, excuse." She bowed and turned to the tall male orc to speak to him. "Terra cum cravash, terra crem Blackston." The large brute of an orc snorted and brought his fist up to touch his chest. "Tall," he said in a deep and gruff voice. "Tall?" I asked. "Excuse," the girl repeated. "This High Cravash Garshul Drakeslayer, High Khan of Cravash Khanate." This caused me to jump in surprise. The fatigue I felt gone altogether. The Cravash Khanate was the largest orc-controlled government in Eden. They were a warrior nation to some of the mightiest fighters in all of Eden and had outright refused any and all contact with humanity, feeling that the word Cravash is their word for chieftain or Khan, and to carry the name Cravash meant you were a boss, a leader of orcs, and to be very respected, but to be the High Cravash, the greatest of them? Oh my god. "And I am Ashraka Throat Ripper, but you call Ashraka if more nicer." I stared at this female orc and gulped. With a name like that, I suppose there's a story to that, she smiled back.
Title give for ripping throat of Grod.
Of course, I gulped and absentmindedly rubbed my own throat. So, Shraka, that's your name? How can I, help you and Garshul here? At the sound of his name, Garshul stiffened a bit and Ashraka ran forward.
Please excuse, but please refer to Kravash Garshul. It is rightful title. Forget is bad insult.
I felt myself go white, and I swiftly corrected myself. I'm sorry. How can I help Kravash Garshul? Garshul calmed a bit, and he spoke once more to Ashraka in his own orcish tongue. Why didn't he speak English like her? Ashraka waited for him to finish before speaking.
Kravash Garshul say, it would please orc clans greatly if Terra open talk to orcs now. We come because I seeing you before in meet place for Eden monarchs.
I tried to think back to what she was talking about. It was true I'd been to Eden on a monarch meeting 3 years ago when initial diplomacy began. The orcs had been there, but the orc Kravash had been adamant that they wanted nothing to do with humans and walked out with his retinue. But now that I thought of it, that orc looked different from this guy. Was Garshul not the same orc? I remember that meeting, but the orcs had refused any and all diplomatic talks, I answered. Ashraka's face fell a bit and she relayed my words to Garshul. He bowed his head and spoke in an undertone.
Kravash Garshul say, yes, old Kravash Ulhak was fool. He deny talk. He dead. I knew Kravash and wanting make talk.
Wait, the old High Kravash is dead? I gasped. When did this happen?
1 moon ago, Ashraka explained. Kravash Garshul challenge Ulhak for Kravash challenge, and for High Kravash seat. Kravash Garshul win and kill Ulhak in duel. Now, High Kravash. Him word is law.
She looked at her master proudly, and he gave a smile and spoke again. Ashraka listened and then spoke.
Kravash Garshul also say, are you one who open talk with orc?
I blinked and remembered now why they were even here. Well, you'd need to set up an appointment with Ambassador Dixon, and we could have a discussion about...
Excuse, Ashraka spoke up. What is appointment?
An appointment. A time where he's able to meet with you, I answered, baffled by her limited knowledge.
So Ambassador no talk yet, she asked. When can talk?
I pulled out my phone and paged through the calendar. I'd set up and defined his next available appointment day. He has an opening 8 days from now, so you'll have to come back on Friday of next week. Ashraka looked confused, and I showed her the calendar pointing to our day. Each of these boxes is a day, see? I showed her until she finally grasped the meaning.
Ah! So it is long time, then. Excuse.
She turned to Garshul and spoke to him. He spoke back. She spoke. He spoke again. They had this conversation for about 5 minutes before finally she turned back to me.
Excuse. Kravash Garshul say, did not know it would take long time. Cannot stay away from clan too long. Must return. For now, Ashraka Throat Ripper, stay here and speak for orcs.
What? You?
Yes, please excuse. She bowed her head sadly. Kravash Garshul is most important orc. He no stay away long time. He return when can, but if busy, I speak for him.
But, I mean, any decision about trade and travel has to be approved by a member of the governmental body of the people we work with, I tried to explain. She looked confused, and I groaned. I mean, we can only talk to members of your country's leadership, like your chiefs, or your kings, or your khans.
Oh, this is fine, she smiled. Am Datukir, daughter of Kravash Garshul, so am in leader's family.
You're his daughter, I gasped.
Most orc no learn English speak, but I learning best I can. Need speak for Kravash Garshul when a meeting, but if Kravash Garshul not able, good thing I know how speak English.
I mean, okay, that's fine, but, I kept trying to explain how ridiculous this whole situation was. I had to call Dixon and let him know what was going on, but I knew he was probably asleep now, the lazy bastard. I shook my head. Well, I suppose that'll have to do then. They finally left my home and I walked inside ready to collapse and catch some sleep. The whole idea of these orcs wanting all of a sudden open talks and the fact they only had a handful who even learned English, Didn't seem like a good idea, but that wasn't my problem. Dixon could work that out. I just needed rest. So needless to say, I was furious when I heard the sound of my door knocking. I growled angrily and turned over and covered my head. The door knocked louder. Go away, damn it! There was a crash. Holy shit! I rolled out of bed fast and staggered up in my boxers. I'd stripped out of my uniform and desperately wanted to grab for my pants and my handgun. Someone had just broken in, and I didn't want to be caught like this. But no sooner had I gotten pants on and run out to meet the threat, than I saw that it was actually no threat at all. You! Ashraka! She stood there, still in the same clothes I'd seen her in last night. Her hood was up, and she smiled at the sight of me. She looked me over, and her grin broadened. Ah, built well, not like expect. Muscles nice, not orc, but can tell you not weak. Ordinarily, I might have taken the compliment to my physical build with a bashful smile and a hand wave, but right now I was too floored by this orc woman being in my home. What are you doing here? I thought you and your father went home. I only take Kravash Garshul to airport, where he board bird home. I'm ordered stay and conduct talk. Okay, so you're staying in Stero. Okay, fine. What do you want from me then? Rent a hotel or something. I'll call one for you. What hotel? She asked. I snarled angrily, the fatigue making me forget my manners. God damn it, you stupid green bimbo! You show up on my doorstep in the middle of the night, and now you're breaking into my home in the early hours of the morning! I don't have time for this! I suddenly froze, realizing what I'd just said. I looked at Ashraka and backed up fast, knowing I'd just insulted an orc. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. I shouldn't have lost it like that. What's sorry for? She asked. She didn't even look fazed, as if my words hadn't even bothered her. You're not angry? I just insulted you and yelled at you, and I'm sorry for doing that. No sorry for insult, she smiled at me. For orc, insulting common, regular. English hard to learn because insults not so common. Took long time learn manners. She then beamed. It's stupid not speak mind. Say how feel. No hide behind kind word. You angry. Then so say you is angry. I blinked at her a long time and she laughed. So dumb. You look like bass fish when pulled from water. I bristled a little. Yeah, well, you look like something I pulled out from my nose. And you smell like ugly pigskin left rotting, she countered. That's rich. You stink like dirty laundry in the sun. Better stink than being toothless sapsucker like Terran. Better a Terran than a giant green bean bitch. Her eyes widened at that, and then she burst out laughing, hugging her sides and howling with laughter. Oren Snua Mokraza, you are very funny. I found myself smiling too, like I'd let out a horde of stress built up in my chest. I leaned over, breathing heavily. We stayed like that a long time, and then Ashraka sighed and brushed her hair back. You seeing? Say what feel. No hide it. Well, thanks. I guess I needed that. But what I said before still stands. If you're staying in Terra, you need a place to stay. And if you're going to stay in Terra, you might as well find a hotel, which is a place you can stay. Ashraka cocked her head a little and smiled. That is why I here. I stay with you. What? No, we can't do that. Why not? Home too small? I'm not minding. It's not about size. It's a huge conflict of interest. Conflict? She looked stunned, and suddenly there came a glint in her eye as a grin spread across her face. Conflict? English for fight, then. Who I fight? I win. Fight? No. What are you talking about? If cannot stay with you until fighting someone, who I fight. I win honor staying home. It is easy. No Terra human stronger than Ashraka throat ripper. No. Damn it. That's not what I meant. Look. Sit down. I'll explain it to you. I took her arm and led her to the living room and sat her down before launching into my explanation. Okay. I'll try to explain this as simply as I can, okay? And listening, you are an Edenite, and I'm an ambassador's aide. I'm meant to help negotiate or talk out your well-being in this land. If you're living in my home, it looks like we're showing favoritism to the orcs because we don't let other races move in with ambassadors or their aides. Oh. Thinking I see, she nodded. So no want other races think you like me special. Yes, exactly. Because it make them think that they are not liked as much, she continued. Exactly!
I was thrilled she grasped it. She nodded and tapped her chin and then shrugged. Well, no worry. If they make problem, I deal with it. What? I asked. No Eden race stronger than Orc. They challenge or argue to you, you say so, and I make them understand. She raised her fist proudly and winked happily. Won't let any dishonor you, Daniel Blackston. It's just Daniel, please, and that's not the point. You can't just go picking fights with others because they don't like you living here. Why? They have problem, then it their problem, not yours, not mine. If bring problem to you, then it is my problem too. I deal with problem. But it is my problem. I haven't given you permission to stay, I argued. You can't just invite yourself to stay in my home like this. It's not fair. At last, this seemed to wink in, and Ashraka's ears sank a bit. Oh, you do not want me stay because... Oh, I see. Excuse. She looked downcast and nodded. I thought... No, excuse. I'm sorry. Did not mean to. She then stood up and bowed low in apology. We'll find place to stay now. Maybe find hotel. As she turned to leave, I felt a sudden grip of guilt clutch my throat, and I stood up. Wait, I called. She paused and turned to look at me. How about we make a deal? Instead. Deal? She asked. I had to think of the right way to do this. The best possible way that would appeal to this woman as the warrior she was. She'd wanted to fight for the right to live in my house, so perhaps I could play off of that. Maybe you can earn the honor to live here. The effect was flawless. She perked up and stood straight, her ears wiggling and her eyes shining. How? I smiled weakly and held up my arm. Arm wrestle? I was lucky she didn't break my arm that night, but I felt it was worth it to see the smile on her face. To be honest, I was glad to have her in my home. She made me feel like I could actually speak my mind around her, and I told her more than once she smelled like old socks, which was true, though the smile on her face when she laughed at the insult was so bright as any sunrise that... You know what? I didn't mind it. I almost hoped she might get to stay longer than the 8 days before her appointment. And that was the story, and believe it or not, guys, while I was reading that, I found the picture. Let me put it up here. Anyway, that was the story. All right. Well, that takes care of the Edenite Chronicles. I'm glad that we got through that. I'll probably do more in the future. I've got more ideas for Edenite Chronicles. Raven, didn't you say that your Edenite stories are based off of friends or family? Some of them are. I have based some of my Edenite stories off of friends or family or personal stories. Not all of them. Like this one here, I literally just came up with it on the fly. That's not based on anything. But some of the others I did come up with, like the one called A Classroom of Monsters. That one's based on my experiences as a teacher. And then there was another one that was based on an actual friend I had. So there are some that are based on real people, and then there are some that are not. All right. Finally, after all this time... that's cute, and I'm guessing the orc culture is Mongolian-inspired. Very much so, yes. Okay, let's get started. It is time for us to get into the Tale of Tomoki. And as usual, when we get into the Tale of Tomoki, we need to put up a picture for the Tale of Tomoki. So let me go to my pictures, and today we will use a picture that Jay drew. I want to use his picture for this because it's such a good image. But it's a giant image, so I gotta adjust the size. There we go. All right. We last left off on chapter 36 and 37. I am pumped, guys. We're finally going to get to see the battle with Super Saiyan Tomoki and Daikon. All right, here we go.
Chapter 36. Victoria leaned against the window of the bus. She couldn't see. Her lovely red eyes still were cloudy like the world outside, and she couldn't see what was happening. But even so, something felt wrong, and she knew it. There was a sensation of air bloodlust, a fierce craving for carnage, and there was another feeling as well, one of explosive power and rage. She'd felt it before, and it meant Tomoki had released that legendary power again. The Super Saiyan. Tomoki, you did it, didn't you? She whispered. Victoria, are you okay? I'm fine, Shannon, Victoria answered, rubbing her walking cane nervously. Shannon was a school friend of Victoria who was helping escort her for the day while Tomoki was away fighting. No, you're not. You're worried about something. What is it? Shannon, can you tell me what you see? Shannon fell silent and leaned over Victoria to see. Well, it's just really cloudy today, she replied. Everything's foggy and cloudy right now. Oh my God. Shannon paused, and then suddenly her voice became more shrill. What is that? What's what? Victoria asked. It's the Golden Warrior! It's Tomoki! Shannon cried. The sound of squeals and cries from all around rose up as people noticed the fight coming closer. Victoria squeaked and trembled a little, squeezing her cane. Why'd he use that power again? What's he doing? He's fighting some other guy with a tail, and they're flying right this way! Despite his attempt to flee, I was already on top of Daikon, and he knew it. There was a school bus driving down the road at a steady pace, obviously one of the evacuation buses. Daikon was flying alongside it now. I got it. It was clear as day. He was going to use a citizen still evacuating as his trump card. He didn't think I'd go all out if they were in the line of fire. He was definitely wrong about that. I'd kill him for underestimating me. No! I had to calm down. Calm myself. Lower that power output. This inner voice, this instinct in my mind, I had to get it under control as soon as possible. I lowered my power output so I didn't hurt anyone else, and the instant I did, he turned and swung a punch. I blocked and returned with my own. He dodged and we began exchanging blows. The people inside the bus were screaming as they witnessed our duel. You coward! I roared, kicking him hard in the stomach. He grunted in pain and caught my coming fist in his hands and threw me away from him. I landed on my feet, causing traffic around me to screech to a halt. The bus stopped moving instantly. I didn't have time to focus on them, but instead I spun to see all the traffic accidents occurring behind me. Shit! That bastard meant for this! I can't go all out here! Tomoki! Is that you? A familiar voice cried. I spun at the sound. I looked up from the street to see Hosha, Rin, and Faye standing on the sidewalk not far. They looked winded like they'd been running at max speed, but their expressions... Hosha was backing away in horror. Rin's eyes were wide and mystified by the golden energy I was releasing. Faye was trembling like a leaf, both terrified and amazed by what she saw. By the stars, it can't be. A Super Saiyan! This whole time you were a Super Saiyan! Hosha cried. The legends are true! What the hell's going on, Tomoki? Rin demanded. What's he talking about? What's this Super Saiyan thing? So much power. Were you always capable of this? Faye asked. Guys, I don't have time to explain, I replied urgently. I need your help. People are in danger. There was a loud scream interrupting my explanation. My attention turned to the school bus, which was now being lifted into the air by Daikon, levitating under it and holding it over his head like he was lifting weights. He grinned maliciously, and I felt fear grip my chest. Put it down, I roared. If you insist. Catch, he shouted. With ease, he chucked the bus at me as the children and men and women inside screamed. I made a move to catch them when Hosha leapt in my way. Move, he roared. Raising his armored arms, he caught the bus in a massive hug, growling in frustration and pain as he kept the bus from crashing. With tremendous effort, he lowered it down safely as I watched, transfixed by the heroism. Hosha, I cried, leave it to us, Tomoki. Daikon is trying to break your spirit. Do not allow it. What are you talking about? The Super Saiyan power, according to legend, is a manifestation of a Saiyan's ultimate rage and fighting spirit. He wants to break you, hurt others around you so you lose that drive, Hosha explained. You must fight him. You can defeat him, Tomoki. As he spoke, Ren ran forward and struck the side of the bus hard. From her hands, the side of the bus began to freeze rapidly, the steel seeming to wear away as she did. She then peeled away the side of the bus like it was the skin of an orange. Faye, with a leap, threw herself onto the roof of the bus, then grabbed the top with inhumane strength and began ripping off the roof, pulling any weaker or smaller people out through the top. I couldn't stop myself from staring in relief, but after a moment I quickly turned to face Daikon again. Only he was gone. Where'd Daikon go? I roared. Come out, you coward! There! Faye cried. He's over there! I looked away to where Faye was pointing. It wasn't far, only about 50 meters. Daikon was standing in front of two girls. One I recognized to be Shannon from school. I didn't know her that well, but I could remember her face. As for the other girl, my heart stopped. My blood ran cold. Her light hair and her beautiful face, the cane in her shaking hand, the way she tried her best to stay clinging to Shannon like a lifeline, who herself was trembling. Victoria! Just please leave us alone, Shannon whimpered. Daikon only smiled. Don't worry your pretty little heads. I won't kill you. You're not even part of this fight. But that said, I need that weakling to break like a twig. Be a pair of good hostages and scream a little. I won't, Victoria snapped. Tomik's gonna destroy you. You know the weakling. Even better. You'll be the right tool to break him. He reached and grabbed her wrist forcefully and yanked her towards him, causing her to squeal. You got a good voice. Now use it to scare Tomiki into powering down. Let me go! Once you give me what I... Victoria was released in an instant as a golden missile struck Daikon so hard in the chest, his armor shattered like glass. Daikon's eyes bulged as blood burst from his mouth and nose like a fountain. Victoria couldn't see what had saved her, but if she could, she would have seen an enraged Saiyan. Daikon's plan had backfired. Tomiki was far from broken. In fact, he was getting closer and closer to losing all sanity. You bastard! I screamed. How dare you! Daikon flew into the sky from the force of the strikes, and I pursued him. My rage was climbing by the second, the look of fear on her face, that expression of confusion and terror, and the sneer of that monster. I'll leave nothing left of you! There weren't even any bones left to bury! My leg shot out and caught him by the throat, and I kicked him to the earth with the force of a rocket. He struck a nearby skyscraper with enough force the building's base exploded into a cloud of smoke, and yet his momentum sent him bouncing across the city like a rock on a pond. Daikon struggled to recover, feeling the pain of broken bones and fractured ribs. Damn it! I can't believe this! You can't be this strong! Daikon cried. I can't be outdone by this low-class wretch! I streaked down towards him as he spoke. I'd pound him into the dirt. I'd incinerate his flesh. I pulled back my hands, gathering energy. I could see the fear in his face as I fired a ki blast at him. He fired one of his own to try to stop me. Our beams met and began to clash, but mine was stronger. It was going to force through and destroy him in a matter of seconds. I'd destroy him. I'd kill him! No. I tried to suppress that thought, but a part of me didn't want to anymore. Daikon knew it would kill him. Knew I had the power. It was all over his face, and the fear on it. The fear made me hesitate. I shouted. My blast swallowed his whole and struck Daikon full force. I sneered, lowered myself to the ground. He was barely standing. My hesitation had bought him his life. His armor was all but destroyed. His body was blackened with burns and his breathing was ragged and heavy. But he was still alive. I hadn't killed him yet. Bastard! Daikon howled. You bastard! I lowered myself and landed across from him. I was furious. I wanted him dead. The voice in my mind begging me to stop was getting further away. I didn't want to hear it. We were far enough away from the city. And even if we weren't, I just wanted him dead. What was wrong with that? Everything was wrong with it. Everything, and I knew that. I couldn't go down that path. Not now. Kill me, he growled. Kill me and you'll never learn about your people, Daikon challenged. I sneered. I don't give a shit about my people, I snapped. I began building up power to my hand. Time to blast him to pieces. You son of a bitch. If a loser like you can obtain the Super Saiyan, it's not worth the hype, he hissed. Yeah. Keep telling yourself that. I started to raise my hand when I felt something. Something new. I spun to see her bolt out of the shadow of a burning building. She was tan-skinned, long white hair, golden eyes. It was her. The woman from the briefing. Antoinette, the tainted one. Where had she come from? What are you... Before I could react, she lunged at Daikon and then bit his bleeding neck. Daikon howled with pain as his tethered teeth dug into his flesh, and he threw her off furiously. You bitch! What have you Daikon's eyes widened, as did mine. The area around where she bit began to turn dark and was spreading. And it was then I remembered the briefing.
Antoinette was tainted somehow, and if she spread her taint to a Saiyan like Daikon... No, you don't! I fired the ki blast and saw Daikon's body get swallowed in it. I then flew off the ground and rained down fire on him, trying to overwhelm him. When I glared down where he'd stood, I expected to see a broken body. But no, he still stood there, fully intact, and he looked even more surprised than me by it. He was looking at himself as if he himself were stunned by his own survival. The black marking was spreading over his body rapidly. Injuries were healing. His eyes looked bloodshot, and he was trembling. "What?" he cried. His body was bursting with a strange purple aura that I'd never seen from him before. It wasn't like his normal energy at all. It was fierce and somehow foreign. "This energy? where did it come from?" Daikon asked. "Whatever it is, it feels great. Amazing, even. This is incredible!" Daikon smiled broadly.
"What's going on with Daikon?" Ren asked. Hosha, Ren, and Faye had followed the two as their battle had escalated and were now observing from a safe distance. "I saw that blast hit him. Even if it didn't kill him, he shouldn't be laughing like that," Ren argued. Faye was sneering at the aura he was giving off. "Antoinette, it's her doing. She did it." "What?" Ren said. "You mean she..." "Antoinette bit him. She spread her taint. We're too late," Faye screamed.
"Calm yourself," Hosha snapped. "It's not the end. Don't forget, Tomoki is a Super Saiyan."
"Will that even matter?" Faye demanded. "You're putting a lot of trust in a goddamn legend. I'm still confused about this whole Super Saiyan thing,"
Ren growled. "We'll explain later," Hosha snapped. "Right now, we have to try and make sure we limit collateral. We can't get involved in this fight now. This is literally beyond us."
"You can't be serious," Ren snapped. "Tomoki needs all the help he can get."
She ran forward as the air began to chill, but was stopped by Hosha's armored gauntlets. "No, stay back, child."
"Why?" Ren bellowed. "Damn it all! So we just stand here and watch? I'm not gonna spectate this. If I can't help Tomoki fight Daikon, then I'm hunting down Antoinette and taking her out." "Sounds like a plan to me," Faye agreed. Ren shrugged and took off down the street. "Just don't slow me down."
"Damn you, Daikon," I snarled. "Are you afraid, Super Saiyan?" Daikon laughed, feeling himself. "I'm a little surprised by this power, but it feels so right. So come on, weakling. What do you say we kick off round 2?
Daikon launched himself up at me, and I blocked his attack. I was able to block it easily, but there was more power to it now. Where was Daikon's newfound power coming from? Had this aura saved him and revived him? Daikon pressed the attack and began firing rapidly. I dodged and blocked each of them, keeping him back just enough that he couldn't touch me, and yet he was getting closer with each blow. How much stronger had this taint made him? I returned the attacks and blows of my own. Our high-speed exchange of strikes caused a blur of limbs and movements that I was only barely able to follow. It was a battle of instinct at this point. The very air was reverberating with our strikes.
"You're nothing anymore, Super Saiyan!" Daikon roared, kicking me hard in the abdomen. I took the hit and flew back. It didn't hurt that bad. But still, I could tell that it was getting stronger. He was gaining power. I darted back at him, we would collide, and then again we flew at each other like a pair of vicious comets, slamming into each other, trying to break the other first. I had the raw power, but it wasn't enough. Each time I struck, it was like he just took the blow and recovered within moments. It was that blasted taint. It was ravaging his body, but his Saiyan cells were healing and recovering, growing stronger. My blows were only superficial if he could recover that fast. He was making progress on me. Minimal though it was, he was starting to make his blows stick, and I could feel it. "Your attack earlier nearly killed me. We Saiyans learn from your death experiences. We turn near defeat into an increase in power. Each death blow you deliver only strengthens me," Daikon sneered. "And yet this is all you can do? Not all that impressive," I snarled. Daikon just laughed and struck me in the chin. I flew back, rebounding off the building behind me. I snuck through his defenses and slammed my fist into his chest. Reject! The blast hit, and yet Daikon only coughed. The taint had saved him. Could nothing get through this guy? Daikon grabbed my arm and spun me around and around until he finally saw fit to throw me to the earth. As I fell, I saw him pursue me, and I allowed it. I pulled back my hand and aimed it at the earth. I blasted it with a key strike in the earth and rocketed me up at him, repelling me like a jet engine. My head collided with his busted armor, and at last, I felt some penetration through his aura. Daikon grunted and struck me hard in the chest in return. I felt it and cried out in pain. I felt blood dripping from the open wound. "Well fought, weakling. I commend you," Daikon shouted at me as he hovered in the air, bracing himself. "Not a lot have ever pushed me this far, and to think that you would be a Super Saiyan, bringing truth to the legends." I didn't respond to him. I simply glared him down. "But this fight ends here. I'm going to show you a technique that I only use on rare occasions. With this, you can say farewell to this measly city. Stop bluffing, I argued. If you had the power to do that, you would have already. Ha! You think you've seen all I can do? Daikon brought his hands together and cupped them in the front of his body. A light began to glow in between them, bursting with energy, bolts of lightning flashing from it. He was creating something, and it was expanding rapidly. It was growing and growing. As it grew between his hands, he brought his hands up and over his head like he was going to throw it. Die in hellfire, he roared. With that cry, he threw the energy from his hands towards the city. I flew between the blast and the city, and I tried to catch it. But just as it reached me, it passed through my body like a specter, and I felt it enter my flesh. It was hell itself. I screamed as the energy began to destroy me from the inside out. I thrashed and roared in agony as the pain was becoming unbearable. How predictable. I knew you'd try to block it if I said it was to save your precious city, which is what I wanted. That energy's a torture beyond anything you've ever known, Saiyan. How does it feel? Does it hurt? Do you wish you could die and make it stop? I can do that for you. Daikon laughed. I roared and screamed. My ki was igniting. I fought the pain. I had to overcome it, but it was intense beyond all comprehension. I'd never felt this much before. It was like bursts of fire were exploding inside of my body. I had to keep fighting, but as I struggled against the pain, I heard him. Farewell, Tomaki.
And that was the end of chapter 36. All right, chapter 37. Antoinette watched the battle unfold from a distance, her grin widening with each moment. That Daikon, he really is something else. Is it just his Saiyan blood? Is he some kind of genius? He really caught on to that power so quick. Either way, Antoinette! The roar came from behind. Antoinette turned to see two girls running towards her. One was black-skinned with short-cut hair and blue eyes. She had a dangerous look about her. And the air around her was freezing cold. Ren or something or other. Faye, Antoinette laughed. How on earth did you get here? Did you and those fools back home miss me that much? You bitch, she screamed. Look what you've done. You spread your taint to the Saiyan. Do you even know what is going to happen now? Do you even understand the destruction that this will cause? So what? Antoinette hissed. A little destruction could do this whole fucking galaxy some good. A world this corrupt, this wicked. Maybe it needs to be destroyed. Can I punch her now? Ren asked. Faye held out her hand to stop her. This won't stop with Earth or this solar system, Antoinette. Daikon will destroy countless worlds. Is your revenge really worth this risk? Aw, what's wrong with a little risk, Faye? She asked. I got a question, Ren spoke up, the ground beneath her feet gaining a frost to it. Why are you interested in the Saiyans? What good are they to someone like you? That's a joke, right? Tell me you're joking. Even you must realize the power these Saiyans wield. Such power at my beck and call. My ambition will be realized. And these Saiyans are the key. What ambition? Ren asked. Why you go through all this? Revenge, Faye explained shortly. She wants revenge on our race, our world, and she's using Daikon to do it, to satisfy her twisted sense of justice. Faye, you say it with such simplicity. If it were only so basic as that. My hate for you. My loathing for my disgusting rock of a homeworld. It will never be satisfied, she snarled. Well, you didn't count on me, Ren hissed. She thrust her hand forward, and a torrent of ice flew towards Antoinette, who jumped out of the way. If it were only that simple, Antoinette laughed. But try your luck, little girl. Ren charged Antoinette with Faye right behind her. A three-way battle began. Meanwhile, while that battle went on, Tomaki was struggling with his own battle. It felt like my whole body was on fire. I could barely remain in the air. Daikon struck me hard in the chin, and I spiraled out of the sky fast. Daikon was gathering his ki to finish the attack. I tried to bite back the pain, fight through it. I gathered all my energy and raised it, intensifying the power. And now you die, Daikon laughed. There was a loud explosion. Daikon and I both turned to see it below in the city. I could see 3 figures. One was Ren, her body expelling torrents of flowing blasts of ice and snow as she pursued the other figure, who was obviously Antoinette. And the third figure must have been Faye, though it was hard to tell. Her body appeared wreathed in fire of some sort. With a howl, she leapt at Antoinette, who dodged, only to be met with Ren's chilly touch. It was then I noticed something else. The pain was gone. The pain that Daikon had inflicted on me. Daikon had lost his focus on me, and as a result, his technique had weakened. I could fight again. I had to win this battle fast. Daikon! I roared. My ki exploded and radiated, causing a shockwave of power. Noticing my sudden explosion, Daikon quickly flew back to get some distance. Shit! Stupid mistake getting distracted. No matter, I'll do it again and I slammed my fist hard into his stomach. With a grunt of pain, I knew I'd struck home. I followed up with another punch, and another, and another. I kicked him hard in the chest and he smashed into a nearby building. My Super Saiyan aura was intensifying. My anger, my pain, my rage. It was all fueling this fire. And yet each attack was just absorbed and weakened by that annoying aura Daikon had developed. Damn you, Daikon cried. I'll not lose to you! He flew back at me, and once again we collided, rebounding off of each other in a furious collision. Below us, the roads were cracking from the shockwaves of our clash. With each blow, it became more and more clear that this was all a waste of time. My power alone wouldn't defeat Daikon, but there was something that I could do. My only trump card left. But could I afford to use it? Did I even dare to use it again after what it did to me before? What it had done before? No, I couldn't. Not after last time. The Kabatawari, I couldn't use it. As I thought this, Daikon's fist suddenly caught me and I crashed to the ground. I moved to get up, but he rocketed after me and struck me hard in the chest. I roared with pain. His hits were harder. His power was increased. What the hell was this taint doing to him? I glared up at Daikon furiously as a smile spread across his face. He looked less like a Saiyan and more like a monster. So much for the legendary Super Saiyan. Even with all this power, you're still just a weakling. I struggled to get up, to fight back, to resist him, but he had his foot down on my chest. He rose his hand for the final blow. Now die, reject! Daikon was knocked back suddenly by another figure that had appeared. He was fast and angry, his gray hair flashing in the sun. I recognized him instantly. Master! I cried. Hayato was taking his stance and fighting with all his might to hold off Daikon. Pull yourself together, boy, he shouted. You're not out of this fight yet. Master, get away from him, I bellowed. He'll kill you! And I'm merely to let you die like this instead, he demanded. Daikon roared and took a swing. And to my amazement, Master Hayato suddenly spun on his heel and caught the monster's arm before striking it 3 times in key locations. The arm hung limply before he shot an elbow into Daikon's face, sending blood spurting from his nose. I struggled back to my feet as Master Hayato resumed his stance. Listen, Tomaki, you need... Oh! He had no time to finish his warning before I screamed in horror as Daikon struck him hard in the neck. He rolled and hit the ground hard. I screamed. Daikon jumped on top of Master Hayato and placed his foot on his back. You old fool. You have nerve if nothing else. Leave him alone, I roared. I charged him. Daikon sneered and blasted me backwards with a key shot. He attacked me, and I'd like to repay him for it. Hayato raised his head weakly. Tomaki, he called. Boy, listen to me. The city is evacuated. You have nothing to fear now. Hold nothing back against this monster. Use it, boy. Stop him. If ever there was a time to use that technique, do it now. Master, get up, shriveled old fool. Daikon slammed his foot down, and I heard the sound of bones shatter. And Master Hayato said nothing more. Hosha, who had trailed behind the girls, finally caught up to the battle and saw the girls fighting Antoinette. He began to move into support, but suddenly, as he got close, he was knocked off of his feet. His helmet screamed in his ear, warning him about an explosive power level to the east. He turned and saw a golden light building larger and brighter. It was positively blinding, as if the sun itself were radiating in his face. It could only be one thing. Tomaki, he whispered. My roar was loud and furious. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. The golden aura around me exploded with so much power that the buildings around me were crumbling from it, falling into dash, being destroyed by it.
Daikon looked up in surprise as I closed the distance to him in a flash. I slammed my knee into his chest and he rocketed backwards. He retaliated and struck me in the face. I flew back, but then rebounded and attacked again. I struck him. Again. Tears burned away to mist as my ki was getting hotter and hotter. I would end it. I'd destroy him. If the city was empty, then I didn't need to worry. Master died to give me that message. I began releasing ki into my fist and resonating it, forcing it to vibrate and building kinetic energy. The voice in my head was gone. There was no need to hesitate. There was no need. I had control now. Fuck, Daikon snarled. Where's this power coming from? I roared, more ki firing up, more power going into my fist. It wasn't enough. More power. I'd use more. More! I screamed as Daikon's fist found my stomach. I spat up blood as he buried his fist deep into my gut, and I smiled fiercely. Don't know what you're planning in that worthless head of yours. It won't be enough, Tomaki. So what if you're a Super Saiyan? Trash is trash no matter what it does. That old man died protecting a fool, and now you'll join him in hell. I could see them all. The city being swallowed in explosive light. Daikon's laughter as he watched it vanish into nothing. The look of pain and despair on everyone's face. Melody, Victoria, all of them gone in a flash of fire and light. And Hayato's face. That smile he'd give me, the words he'd say, the wisdom in his voice. It was gone. It was all gone. And it too was swallowed in the horrid laughter. The energy my fist had finished gathering. I created a bubble of resonating power surrounding my hand, pulsing, reverberating with energy so massive I could barely contain it. It was ready. I was ready. Daikon swung one more punch at my face. Ki was held in his hand like a dagger, and he was ready to thrust it into my chest. I took the blow directly and hacked up blood, and I felt him puncture me. Go to hell. You and that worthless old fossil. He was my master. I grabbed Daikon's arm and held him in place as I drew back my now glowing fist. And I'm gonna kill you for what you did. I struck. Antoinette threw up her hands and knocked back Ren with a forceful shove, but the result was frozen palms. Faye darted around Ren and struck Antoinette across the face, leaving burn marks on her flesh. Antoinette cringed, threw herself back, and tried to evade them. You're an annoying pest, aren't you? She sneered. I'm growing sick of this game. Then give up and quit, Ryan offered. Just surrender quietly and maybe I'll only freeze you into a popsicle. Ha! You're a regular The air shattered as the world around them above shook with a terrible tremor. Antoinette, Ren, and Faye were thrown to the ground by a massive quake that shook the heavens themselves. All looked up to see Daikon and Tomaki in the air, and Tomaki's fist was planted in Daikon's chest, and Daikon's face was contorted in a look of horror and excruciating pain. It seemed like he was screaming, but no sound was coming from his body. His very body seemed to be concaving inwards, and the strange aura that was protecting him was barely able to withhold the force hitting him. The air was cracking and vibrating. Entire skyscrapers and towers were shattering and crumbling. The ground was erupting in fissures, and cars were knocked over in a horrid attack. They couldn't even stay on their feet. What happened? They cried. Guess Tomaki had one more trick up his sleeve, Ren cried, clutching a nearby light pole. Antoinette growled and slipped back to escape. I wasn't expecting this. I think it's time to bring this game to an end. Ren suddenly bounded towards her. No! This ain't over yet! Antoinette leapt out of her range and kicked off Ren's head, knocking her to the ground. You're right. It's not over. But for now, I will leave you. Perhaps we'll meet again. And without another word, Antoinette vanished into thin air, leaving Ren and Faye cursing in anger. Daikon and I fell to the earth, unable to break our fall or slow down. I landed and clutched my arm in pain, as it bled from different points, and the bones inside felt like they'd been hit over and over by a sledgehammer. My whole body was spent, my energy all but gone. I'd used up all I had in that last attack. My hair returned to the normal, and my golden aura disappeared. I was back in my base form, and I was now unable to even stand. I tried to even get to my knees, but even that was too much. I simply lay on the ground, exhausted and at the mercy of the enemy. I turned my eyes to Daikon, and to my amazement, he was laying in the dirt in a heap. Daikon's body was contorted and broken, his chest concaved inward and blood pouring from his mouth and nose. There were various bruises and contusions on his body from the eruption of energy, and there was no doubt his bones were decimated at this point. He gritted his teeth and trembled, fighting to get to his feet, but each time coughing in pain and falling. You son of a bitch, he roared. That aura, it took the brunt of the damage, I grunted. Shit. I'll kill, he cried. He slammed his hand to the ground only for it to break under his weight. His bones that weren't broken were so fragile right now that they were likely to break from any amount of pressure. His aura may have saved him, but the attack had left him destroyed. I had no way to fight back if he did manage to throw another attack. I wouldn't be able to do anything if he did. But it looked like he was no better than I was. In fact, he looked worse. I'll end you! How dare you do this to me? I'm a Saiyan elite! That is enough out of you. I looked up to see Hosha land by my side. His arms crossed and his voice confident yet a little shaky, as if he himself was coming to terms with reality. This fight is over, Daikon. He glared at the Saiyan and then relaxed. Hosha, I weakly muttered. Calm yourself, Tomiki. Daikon is defeated, and he is dying. I looked, and to my surprise, Daikon's body was breaking down. Had my attack really destroyed him? It is the taint, Hosha explained. Daikon's Saiyan biology let him endure and overpower the taint, gaining power constantly from it. But your final attack pushed him too far. He can't recover quickly enough, and now the taint is claiming his life. He has minutes at best. Daikon's heard him, too, and said nothing. His angry expression turned somber, as if he were accepting this news. So, I was bested by a Super Saiyan. Well, it was entertaining at the very least. His eyes then turned to me. Hey, trash! You're still talking shit, I snarled, though I had no strength to back up my words. Don't get cocky just 'cause you won. You're still garbage. But you might just become something worthwhile, I blinked. Was I getting praise from him? If you have something you want to tell me. I winced. The pain was getting worse. I was sinking, unable to even raise my head now. Listen close, kid, Daikon moaned, his voice getting weaker. You want to know about our people? About the Saiyans? Well, here you go. They're dead. I felt my heart stop as I turned my eyes to him in horror. What? We're the last of our kind. Only a handful of us survived the extinction. Our world was destroyed. I heard it was an asteroid, but I doubt that. I'm not sure what or who killed off all of our kind. But now there are only a handful of Saiyans still alive, you among them. You better not stay a weakling, you hear me? You're a Super Saiyan. You carry your Saiyan pride. Become better than our race ever was. Better than what our people were. Bring pride to the Saiyans. I turned my eyes to Hosha, and his expression told me that Daikon wasn't lying. I then looked at my dying foe and spat. Like I care about any of that. You killed my master. You threatened Victoria. You tried to destroy my home. Yeah. And look how strong you are now, Daikon grinned. I stared. You were one last thing, he groaned, his eyes slowly closing. Your mom. You asked about her. I knew her, kid. I fell silent to hear him speak. She was on my squad back in the day. I don't know if she survived the destruction of our planet, but I know that I didn't kill her. She was on leave that day. The day I killed my comrades. My eyes widened. You mean she could be... I don't know. But if you're really that interested in finding her, maybe ask the patrol for help on that. Either way, that's all I had to say. Do me a favor, trash. Don't you fucking lose. Ever. His eyes then closed. and Daikon was gone. Hosha sighed and shook his head. Well, I suppose you earned his respect, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. As for Antoinette, we're still looking for her. We'll get her. Later, I collapsed, my body unable to move or speak or even see. Tomoki! Hosha shouted, running to my side and dropping down beside me. Shit! You use too much power! You're not breathing! Medic! Come in! Come in! I need a medical unit now! Help me get to... I didn't catch any more of what he said. I was fading in and out of consciousness. I was worn out, spent, done. I just wanted to sleep. If I could just close my eyes for a bit. As my world faded to black, I saw a light in the distance. A strange feeling of peace washing over me. And there was a face there. A face I'd thought I'd never see again. Mom? I whispered to the void.
And that was Tale of Tomoki Chapter 37. God, that hurt my throat. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to Monster Club. I'm excited for this one. Oh boy. Monster Club, Monster Club, Monster Club. Well, let me know what you guys thought of that, of Daikon, because Daikon is now finally dead. We are done with Daikon. We're done with him and his story. He is dead. Tomoki finally beat his biggest foe. Yet, anyway. Well, so that you guys know, I'll go ahead and tell you all this. Tomoki, I wrote Tomoki to have... Okay, so Tomoki's story is broken into two parts. There's the pre-time skip and the post-time skip. And in the pre-time skip, there are a total of 4 acts. You have the Mamaragon act, which we got through. We have the Poachers act, which we got through. We have the Daikon arc, which we just got through, and now there's one more arc. There is one more arc before we get to the post-time skip, and that arc is going to be huge, guys. It's going to be huge. It was Brainiac who destroyed Planet Vegeta? No. It was not Brainiac. Because Tomoki has one more big villain to beat. And believe it or not, this villain's even worse than Daikon. Holy shit. I'm so excited to get to this villain, guys. Okay, anyway. Let's move on to Monster Club. Let's move on to Monster Club. Okay. Alright. Monster Club. Monster Club Chapter 51. I can't believe how far we've gotten. Chapter 51. Okay, here we go. It's taking too long, Katie hissed, playing with her fingers. The alarm should have sounded. We need to go. Just be a bit patient, Alexander smirked. You're way too jumpy. I was in that building. I know what it's like in there. Of course I'm jumpy. Sorry, but give him some time. If we don't hear nothing in a few minutes, we'll go in, Alexander sighed, not wanting to start an argument. Annie was on the ground playing dice with Calypso and David, who were all trying to hide their anxiety. Jelly was sipping a bottle of water while watching them play. She had tried to play earlier, but she kept dirtying the dice with her body. This is too nerve-wracking. How long have they been in there? 5 minutes, David answered nonchalantly. You don't act worried at all. If Christina was in danger, she'd just rip off those toy ropes on her wrist and hypnotize everyone in her way. She's kind of sick sometimes, David explained. No one is any real danger. My friends are in danger, Katie snapped. Katie, calm down, Calypso urged. We will help them. We'll save Asher and Michelle. And what about Abraham and Sarah, huh? Who are we going to save them? Are we going to save them too? Of course we are, Annie squeaked, rolling the dice, though she was trying hard to hide the tremble in her voice. We have to. You're damn right about that. Language. She's a kid, Alexander remarked. Plus, Jelly has a habit of repeating new words other people say, so don't swear around her. I'll say whatever I damn well want to say, Katie said. Damn? Jelly asked. No, don't repeat that, Jelly, Alexander grumbled. What damn? Jelly asked. Now look what you done, Alexander smirked. Katie hissed furiously as she turned away to look up at Tori, who was still circling the sky, looking for any sign of trouble. She then slithered next to Tamil, who was sitting, leaning against the rocks they had hid behind, staring off into the nothingness. How can everyone be so damn calm? Katie said. We all scared, he answered. They don't act like it. What acting like it fix? Tomiki growled. It was uncharacteristic for him to be so grouchy and gruff. Tamil always smiled. He had a laugh waiting, wanting to joke around. What was going on with him? Katie crossed her arms and glared at Tamil. Since when are you all mature and straightforward? The club is broken, he sighed. I'm wanting everything back together badly. We all do. Can't lose family again, he said. Katie frowned and wrapped an arm around Tamil, trying not to let either of them think of such an outcome to this evening's mission. Hey, look, Tori's coming! Everyone paused what they were doing to look up and see the harpy floating down to them quickly. She landed next to Alexander, beaming brightly. I saw him! Sarah stuck her head out the window to signal me. They broke free and they want us to get ready. How'd they get away from them Dawnbringers? Alexander asked. Christina probably suggested they should. God, that power gives me the creeps, David shivered. Shut it, come on, we gotta get ready to blow in a hole in that wall. Jelly, you ready to rock their world? Jelly's still not sure what damn means, Jelly replied. I'll explain later, Alexander sighed. Just come on. They rushed to the side of the building amidst frightened and alarmed men darting left and right inside the building. Annie stopped about 15 yards away from the wall and held out her hands. Alexander threw himself in front of her so that she wouldn't get hit by the shrapnel and knelt down. Do it! Pugball! She cried. With a massive bang, the wall in front of them blew to pieces with a fierce explosion. The size of the hole was large, and at least 3 Dawnbringers agents lay unconscious on the floor from the obliterated wall. Alexander brushed off the debris from his back and turned to see about 5 or 6 men running to check on the hole. Jelly, get him! Alexander shouted. What the fuck? The Dawnbringer never finished his cry of shock as suddenly a mass of pink goo threw itself at him and knocked him to the ground. He fired his gun and swung his fist, but the bullets just passed harmlessly through the fluid body, and the punches did little more than get stuck in her. Another soldier ran to remove her, but Jelly was faster, throwing out her arm like a whip and snaring his head, trapping his mouth and nose in her liquid body. Unable to breathe, he tried to pull away, only for her arm to stretch with him. Jelly was a force of nature. They couldn't touch her, but she was able to destroy them. You bad men let friends go, Jelly growled. Atta girl, Alexander shouted, running in and giving her assistance as he slugged a Dawnbringer across the cheek, sending him sprawling across the room. David, take the mermaid and the mummy to their friends. Penn will be hovering where they are. Right, hang on, you two, David shouted as Calypso and Tamil clambered onto his back. With a powerful gallop, David ran through the asylum, leaving Alexander and Katie and Jelly behind to fight the struggling Dawnbringers. Annie remained hidden behind the rubble, not wanting to be in the line of fire. Jelly, you and I'll hold them here. Katie, you can go get your friends if you want. No, these bastards have it coming. What's a bastard? Not now, Jelly, Alexander cried. Fine, just lay low and don't make yourself a target. As he spoke, he threw the weight of his body into a soldier, arming with a pistol, smashing him into the wall where he couldn't fire a shot. I hope the others are okay, Annie whispered. When David finally found Sarah and Christine, he slowed down, recognizing the look of fear and tears in their eyes. Calypso climbed off of David's back and ran to Sarah. They stood outside of a door, and Sarah was covering her watery eyes with her hands. What's wrong? Calypso asked. Who is it? Calypso didn't need an answer when she heard the roar of anger coming from inside the room. She turned to see the massive werewolf form of Michelle inside, chained like a dog to the wall. She thrashed and tugged against her boots, but couldn't free herself. She's lunar lighting, Christine explained. They kept her under constant lights that imitate the moon. She's been like this for days, most likely. Then we need to turn them off now, Tamil cried. Christine nodded. The switch is in there. Behind her, she pointed. But going close to her means risking getting mauled. The realization of this brought a serious silence to the group. Jelly's a machine, but she can't hold back the Dawnbringers forever. We need to act, David hissed. Any thoughts? Maybe I could try hypnotizing her with my eyes, but I've never tried it on a werewolf. I don't know how it'll work, Christine muttered. Besides, while I hold her, someone else needs to flip the switch. I'll do it, Sarah cried, wiping the tears from her eyes. Christina nodded slowly and walked inside, taking off her shades and glaring at Michelle. There was a moment of fear as everyone waited to see what Michelle would do. She roared loudly at Christina and started to lunge, but Christina never faltered, her eyes boring into Michelle and her snake hair slithering and squirming dangerously. David gripped his arm in fear. If she got too close, if she took one false step, an angry werewolf would rip her apart. I don't think it's going to work, David shuddered. Just give it a sec, Christina shouted back. Sarah stayed close behind Christina, waiting for Michelle to stop. Look at me, you mutt, Christina hissed. Michelle did finally turn and snarl at her, her eyes finally meeting Christina. Get lost! Everyone froze in horror. Even Christina gasped. That demand had come from the maw of the snarling and drooling Michelle. It was not her voice, but she had spoken. Did you just... Michelle! Sarah screamed, running dangerously close. Michelle, it's us! Sarah, don't! Christina cried, grabbing her arm to pull her away. Michelle, it's me! Sarah, we're here to save you! Just... Christina yanked Sarah back hard, just as Michelle threw her body at Sarah in a snarling, biting rage. Sarah fell over as Christina now glared deep into Michelle's eyes. I said stay down! Christina hissed at Michelle. Michelle blinked and tried to look away, but found it difficult. She was finally being trapped in the glare. Turn the damn switch already! Christina snarled. Sarah finally seemed to snap from her stupor. She jumped up and scurried over to the wall and threw the switch, shutting off the moonlights and turning on the normal overhead ones. The wolf before them let out a howl of shock and slowly but surely began to shrink again, falling back to the ground and the chains falling off of her smaller, naked body. Michelle? Tamil called, hobbling into the room, feeling to the ground with his hands as he tried to crawl to her. Michelle! Are you okay? Calypso ran past him into the room to check on Michelle, falling beside her and rolling her over to see her injuries. Look away, David, Christine called. Oh, shove off. I've seen a naked girl before. So I guess I know who to blame for the peephole in the bathroom, Christina grumbled. Is now really the time for that? Sarah asked. Calypso, how is she? Calypso looked her over, pressing her ear to Michelle's chest and frowning. Her heart is beating, but it's weak. I think she's exhausted. Being a wolf must be tiring, and for that long? Yeah, I don't recommend it, Michelle groaned as her eyes slowly opened little by little. Michelle! Sarah cried. How? You never wake up so quickly after transforming, Calypso asked. Guess I overslept, Michelle mumbled, weakly trying to sit up. She then noticed Christina and David not far off. Who are... They're friends. Abraham brought them to help, Sarah said. Abraham, where is he? She asked. Wait, where's Asher? What happened to... Calm down. We're looking for him, David added. Wait, who's Asher? Vampire friend, Tamil replied, finally reaching Michelle. Overcome by the feel of her leg, he threw himself over her and hugged her tightly. Michelle! I miss you. Club not same without you leading it, Michelle. Hey, you big dummy, I'm all right. Now get off me, I'm worn out, Michelle grunted, shoving Tamil off. Michelle, there was a moment in your wolf form that you spoke. Did you see us? Sarah asked. Michelle looked down a moment as if thinking on the question. There were moments where the fog almost lifted. I could see things like shapes and figures. They were never clear, though, and sometimes I'd try to focus on it, but then it'd vanish again, and I heard this voice call me a mutt, and I saw you. She pointed to Christina. I didn't recognize you. I thought you were a Dawnbringer, so I told you to get lost. Yes, Sarah cried. You did, Michelle. You almost gained control. Look, this isn't the time for that, Michelle groaned, climbing to her knees. Asher's in danger. We can't stay here. We have to help him. Asher's in trouble? Calypso cried. What are they doing to him? Her blue-tinted body turning unusually pale. They're starving him of blood. I heard them saying if he lasted another 5 days, they'd let Drake kill him. A starved vampire. Oh, joy, Christina grumbled. And what's worse, I don't think my eyes will work on a vampire. How are we going to fix that? How the hell am I supposed to know? Michelle cried. All I know is we have to get to him. He's in the mess hall. She climbed to her feet, leaning on Sarah and David for support. Which way? Calypso asked. Turn right and run till you get to the stairs. They locked him up before me. I know where he is. We're right behind you. Calypso was already booking out of the room to get to Asher, to find the vampire who needed her. Let me go check out the situation, Drake growled to Molly, who was just pacing in frustration. No need. I'm sure the men can handle it. We need to deal with the immediate issue first, Molly growled. The singer brat. Abraham looked up from the ground, crawling away from Drake and Molly. He knows I'm a witch, and if he spills that particular can of beans, there's no cleaning up the mess. The Dawnbringers will kill us both. I'd love to see them try. But fine, you're the boss. He reached down and grabbed Abraham, who kicked angrily. Get back! Abraham cried. Feisty, aren't you? He laughed. You're a coward! Abraham cried. Asher would still be normal if not for you. No, Drake answered. He'd be dead. I thought I'd killed him before,
Making him a vampire was a mistake I'll fix in a minute. After I finish you off. Now, Drake, we agreed. We're experimenting to see how long a vampire can go without blood. Yeah, that was the arrangement. But I'm a bit sick of seeing that waste of flesh every time I come in here. Just a reminder of what I left behind. Find yourself another vampire for your experiments. I'm killing the brat. So impatient, she groaned. But there's no point arguing with you when you're like this. She threw a key at Drake, who caught it without even looking. Fine, unlock him and kill him if that's such a big deal to you. First the human. He smiled, revealing his fangs. I'll enjoy this. Sorry. There was an explosion. Abraham and Drake turned to see the door behind them blow open, with a frantic mermaid run in, followed closely by Christina the Gorgon, David and Sarah supporting an exhausted Michelle, and behind them was a blind mummy led by Annie, the little witch. Alexander, Jelly, and Katie, who had all finished their business out front, were now bringing up the rear. Abraham! Katie cried upon seeing him on the ground. Jelly! Alexander shouted. Jelly sprinted around the group and threw herself at Drake. The ball of slime and the vampire were knocked to the ground, and the two began to struggle against each other, thrashing and suffocating the other with angry screams and hisses. In the struggle, the clatter of a key falling on the floor rang out, and Abraham saw it, leaping for it. How the hell did you get in here? With a scream, Molly threw out her hand to cast a spell, but Annie ran out first and held up her hands. Incinerate! Molly shouted. Bong pay! From Molly's hand, a tongue of flame rushed to consume the club, but from Annie's, a giant wall of glitter with the flames lick, but could not get around. The look of surprise on Molly's face was one of shock and disgust. Another witch was in her presence. However, Annie's face was mixed with fear. She knew that everyone else did just by looking. Annie was not on the level of this witch. Katie and Alexander moved in the same second and rushed Molly. Molly used a spell and tossed Alexander aside, but Katie got by and knocked her to the ground. And now, the fight had really begun. The club rushed the room to attack Molly, but none went near Drake, and Jelly, who was now fighting like a pair of angry cats. Somehow Drake was able to keep her off of him. Was it just his vampire strength or more than that? But Abraham didn't have time to think on that. He had a key and a door to open. Asher! Abraham shouted, running to the door and pressing the key into it. He turned the lock and opened the door to see the shriveled and shaking body of the white-haired, pruny Asher. Asher, don't go near him, Calypso cried. He'll bite you. Calypso, the only one who didn't rush on the attack, was now walking around Abraham to Asher. She knelt now next to him. Calypso, don't heal. It'll be okay. I'll be okay, Calypso whispered. She reached over and turned Asher over to see her. His sunken eyes noticed her, and for a brief moment he froze, like a wolf that just spotted prey. His mouth opened in hunger, but he snapped it shut. Calypso, don't. Stay away from me. Asher, it's okay. Take my blood. She said, it's not human. It won't save me, he whispered. I don't want to kill you. You won't. But I need you to drink it. You need your strength. We need you right now. Abraham was confused. Asher had said once that human blood was the only thing that could satisfy a vampire's thirst. All Calypso's blood would do is give him strength back, but not satisfy anything. Why would she offer it knowing that? Please, Asher is struggling with himself. Calypso finally leaned down and pulled out something from her dress. A beautiful shell necklace, the same one that Abraham had seen her making so many weeks ago. She'd made it for Asher, but never given it to him. She held the shell to her neck and stabbed it. Calypso! She cried out, clutching the wound as a small stream of blood rolled out. It's not deep, but it could get infected. Asher, fix it. Asher looked at her, then in loving disbelief. But all the same, he took her in his worn-out arms and clasped his mouth over the wound and began to feed. Abraham could only watch in awe as the transformation took place. With each gulp of blood, the white hair of Asher began to turn black again. His shriveled body regained life and texture, and his eyes, still sunken in, but now glowing with red fire. And yet there was something inhuman. A rage. A fury. As Calypso lay back, her eyes opened wide in ecstasy, as her blood brought Asher back from the brink. Abraham finally saw what she was doing, why she offered her non-human blood. She wasn't trying to satisfy Asher's hunger. She needed Asher this way. She needed him thirsty and angry. Abraham leapt to his feet and ran out of the destructive path Calypso was about to unleash. Run! He screamed. Asher's about to go into a blood rage! The next sound that shook the asylum was the bellow of a very pissed-off vampire.
On to the next one. Chapter 52. The scene was like an action moment in a movie. Half the club was trying to hold off Molly, while Jelly struggled to hold down the furious Drake. The vampire finally managed to throw her off of him and around the others. Abraham froze as his eyes fell on him, hungry and leering. "I'll start with the human," he charged. Abraham covered his eyes, expecting to feel the fatal bite, but it never came. A furious roar from behind sent Abraham falling to the ground as a streak of black and red shot past him and punched Drake across the room with the force of a shotgun shell. Molly spun around just in time to see it, and her anger turned to shock and fear. The vampire boy Asher was back on his feet, and he was angry. "I've waited so very long to kill you," Asher hissed, marching towards his father, blood trickling from his lips. Drake climbed to his feet as well and brushed the dust off his shoulders. "So, you got a snack, did you?" Drake asked. "Think that's all you need to kill me, boy?" No one dared move. Even Molly, who had plenty of clear openings to escape, stood stock still as the two vampires squared off. "Abraham!" Asher snapped. "Did you bring my guns?" "Yeah!" Abraham quickly grabbed the pistols that Asher had left behind when he was kidnapped, pulling them from his waistband and throwing them to him. Asher didn't turn to look up, likely for his own protection. But the instant he caught the pistols, he turned them on Drake and fired 4 rounds. Drake dodged with ungodly speed and power towards Asher. Locking his left arm, Asher turned with the right pistol towards Drake's head, only for Drake to headbutt him back and send him sprawling to the ground. "A few sips of blood isn't enough, kid," Drake laughed. "Abraham!" Abraham was distracted from the brawl by the sound of shouting. Turning behind him, he saw Katie slithering to him fast. "Are you all right?" "Yeah, I think so. We need your help. Calypso's unconscious. We have to get her out of here." "Get her on my back," David urged, breaking his own eyes from the tussle of undead monsters. "I'll ride her out of here." "I'm with you," Michelle called, joining the 4 worried youths. Abraham ran with them to Asher's cell, where Calypso lay comatose and pale. With Michelle and Katie's help, Abraham was able to lift her onto David's back, who counted nervously. "Hey, your friend gonna be okay there?" he asked. "Yeah, Drake's in deep shit," Katie snapped. "I don't know. He's not going down easy," Michelle muttered. "Asher's not in his blood rage yet. I mean, he's pissed off, but that's not a blood rage." "How do you know when he's in one?" David asked. "Trust me, you'll know," Katie replied. "Now let's get Calypso out of here. Quick!" David nodded and took off for the exit. Abraham started to follow, but was thrown back by Asher, being flung across the room and into the wall. "Asher!" Drake was on him in an instant. Asher jumped to the side, but it was no use. Drake grabbed him by the throat and held him down. Asher raised his gun to fire, but with a simple slap, Drake knocked Asher's hand aside as he grinned over his kill. "I've been at this a lot longer than you, boy." He laughed and took his free hand and pulled a glove onto it before grabbing from inside his coat a long silver cross. His glove hand smoked a bit, burning him, but with a glove, a cross was hard for him to hold. I used this to kill vampires for the Dawnbringer organization, and now I'll plant it in your ungrateful little heart." Asher hissed at him. "Say hello to your mother for me." Drake slammed the cross down like a gravestone into Asher's chest. Blood burst from his injury, and Asher coughed loudly, his head falling back, his eyes glazing over slightly, and he lay motionless. Drake stared down at the unmoving Asher and laughed heartily. "Damn it," Christina cried. "We need to pull out." "Yeah, we ain't joking," Alexander agreed. "Come on." "Where are you going in such a hurry?" Molly screeched. "Bind!" Waving her hand as long tendrils burst from her ground and snared Alexander and Christina. Sarah ran to help them, but was also trapped in the binds. Annie cried, running to their side. "You're next, little Molly was cut off by the enraged Jelly, who threw her slimy body onto Molly. "You let friends go!" she cried. "Filthy thing!" Molly cried. "Freeze!" The moment she spoke, Molly was thrown off of her and frozen in place, as if her liquid body was stuck. With a cry of anger, Christina thrashed at her bonds. "No, Jelly!" "Bitch!" Ben shrieked, the little fairy flying at Molly in vain attempt to do harm, though for her it was no harder to parry him than to swat him aside. Abraham watched the ongoing battle, and his eyes fell on the seemingly dead Asher. This was nothing short of a nightmare, it only getting worse. Michelle fell to her knees, observing everything, her body convulsing in trembles. The club is dying," she whimpered. "Monster!" Sarah screamed, causing everyone in the room to stop and look at her. All 6 of her shiny red eyes were overflowing with tears. She struggled against the bonds holding her as 8 legs kicked wildly. Her eyes were on Drake, who was smirking back at her, removing his gloves. "You're one to talk, Drider," he chuckled. "You're nothing but a monster!" "As are you and your friends. The only one in this room who's not a monster is the human Abraham.
No, Sarah screamed. It's not because you're a vampire or because I'm a dritter. It's what you are. It's who you are.
Drake laughed, taking a few steps towards her, raising his hand to break her neck. Sarah lunged at him to bite him, but as his hand found her throat and lifted her off the ground despite her size and weight, he smirked. Who I am? You don't know anything about me. So how can you call me a monster?
Because you don't even know your own son, Sarah hissed, a slow smirk growing across her face. Because if you knew anything about him, you'd know. Asher is immune to the cross.
The paleness on Drake's face suddenly increased sharply as realization fell over him. From far behind him, where Asher's body lay, shadows and rolling tendrils of dark matter began to form around his body, lifting him back up as his eyes turned to a bloody red. Shit, Drake roared. I need to put it... He didn't finish. He charged the massive shadow that was Asher, only for it to explode into a swarm of furious, screeching bats, biting and flying around him in a typhoon of bloodlust and rage. Roaring, Drake tried to fight off the onslaught of bats, but he might as well have tried to bottle in smoke. Get him, Asher! Abraham screamed. Kick his ass! Christina joined in. There was another roar of fury as Drake was launched into the air by a sudden punch to his jaw. The bats began to reform into the body of an outraged vampire. Asher ripped off his jacket and threw it on his father. The jacket hit his head, blinding him. Grabbing him by the neck, Asher punched him again and again and yet again into his father's skull, leaving bloodstains on the jacket. Asher let out an inhuman scream as he kneed his injured father in the chest. That's enough! Molly shouted. Out of the ground, tendrils like the ones binding Sarah, Christine, and Alex burst up to snare Asher. Agreed, Michelle screamed, running forward and tackling Molly to the ground. Annie! Tamil! Give me a hand! Annie, who this entire time had been watching in horror, finally ran to help Michelle restrain Molly, pulling a very confused and scared Tamil with her. Abraham could only observe and unsure of what to say or do. Abraham, get me out of this! Sarah cried to him. I can't help! Right! Abraham fought to pull his eyes away as he hurried to Sarah to break her bonds. His eyes turned back to Asher to escape the tendrils Molly attacked him with and was now wrestling his father. Drake swung a punch at his head, but Asher's mouth opened wide and bit down on his father's fingers, blood dripping from his knuckles. I'll kill you, Asher hissed. I'm going to make you pay for everything! Asher chomped down on the fingers of his father, and they fell from his mouth, leaving Drake screaming at his mangled hand. Thank you, Sarah cried as Abraham ripped off the last tendril. Get us too, Christina shouted. Be quick, Alex agreed. Sarah ignored them and scurried as fast as she could to the other side of the room. Michelle and Annie, meanwhile, were wrestling down Molly as Tamil used his own bandages to restrain her. Get off me! Get off! Melanie cried. She raised her hand at Michelle. Decapitation! No! Tamil bellowed. Tamil threw himself in the way of her hand. In the instant, a flash of light shot out. Tamil's head went sailing off of his body as his body slumped to the ground. Annie let out a petrified scream as Tamil's head rolled across the room. Tamil! Michelle screamed in terror. Abraham froze. First Jelly, now Tamil, and possibly Calypso. His knees were shaking. Don't panic on me, Christina begged. Just help us get free so we can help. Right, Abraham winced, blinking back tears and fighting the pain in his heart. His hands went to work clawing away the vines and bonds holding Christina down, while Alexander was bellowing like a bull, fighting with all he had to break free. Michelle, though, was snarling like a dog, slamming her foot as hard as she could on Molly's face, as if she wanted to break her skull into the concrete. Meanwhile, it seemed that Katie and David had made a clean escape with Calypso. Asher! Sarah screamed. She pulled back her hand, holding a small object. She threw it hard as she could to Asher, who caught it in one hand. It was the cross that Drake had used to try and kill him earlier. Drake saw Asher catch it and scream, jumping away like a coward. He made a move to escape, but Asher was on him in a flash, and with a hiss like a viper, Asher bit down on his father's neck and held him in place. You had no idea that I became immune because I never took off Mom's cross necklace, he growled. So thanks, Dad. Thanks for not taking that off me when you turned me. Now I'll pay you back for what you did to everyone that I loved. Asher slammed the cross with all his strength into his father's chest. His father opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Instead, his body seemed to ignite into fire and flesh, and all dried and turned to ash, drifting to the floor as death turned to a cold embrace. As the last of his ashes drifted away, Asher exhaled, long and low before sinking to his knees. Asher? Abraham called. He needs blood! Human blood! Michelle shouted. No, Christina snapped. You go near him, he'll kill you. He's not thinking clearly. Just let me up already. Abraham nodded and broke Christine free at last. She brushed herself off and turned to Asher. Hey, bloodsucker! She shouted. Asher turned to look at her, his red eyes flashing, still lost in his blood rage. To him, she was just another stranger, a potential enemy.
Christina threw off her shades and her snake hair came alive. Let's have a staring contest. Asher and her locked eyes, and while Asher wasn't going slack-jawed and brain-dead like the rest of us might have, he certainly wasn't moving. It was as if she was just keeping him calm enough to not go insane. I'll hold him. Take care of the witch, Christina hissed. Right. Just keep... Molly held up her hand and screamed loudly. Away! The blaster in her hand sent Annie and Michelle rolling to the ground as she stood up. You rats! Filthy monsters, all of you! You ruined everything! How dare you! How dare you do this to me! She looked at the pile of ashes that used to be Drake, and at the vampire Asher was still being pacified. Christina dared not break her gaze on Asher yet. Not until she knew he was under control. I'll get you all back for this one day. All of you! Annie threw up her hands and winced physically as she tried to use magic once more, clearly going beyond her limit. But Molly was already way ahead of her. She snapped her fingers and vanished in a flash of fire, disappearing completely from the room and likely from the building. The room went into an eerie quiet as everyone tried to take in what had just happened. With Molly gone, the tendrils holding down Alexander faded away, and he got up onto his feet. That was intense. Is it over? He asked. Not yet. Still got a hungry, kind of pissed off vampire. Any suggestions? Christina growled. Can you give him a command? Michelle asked, regaining composure. I can try, no guarantees. Tell him to turn himself into Ashley. See if that doesn't relax him some, Michelle instructed. Asher, Christina replied, you will turn to Ashley. I command you to turn to Ashley. Do it! Asher stood still a moment, and for a second it seemed like he was going to defy her. But slowly he started to shift into his smaller Ashley form. As he shrank down, Christina dared to blink and relax again, sitting down. Quick! Abraham, come here! Sarah instructed, running to Abraham. Abraham rushed to Sarah and nodded. Yeah? Sarah pulled out a small broken rock and held it up to his neck. Sorry. She then cut a small slash on his neck enough to bleed. But we gotta feed him. Ow! Warn me next time you do that! Oh, get over it, she growled. Ashley, come here. Ashley, still dazed, looked up, seeing the bleeding Abraham. Her eyes lit up and her mouth watering. No biting, but drink. Yeah, hurry, Abraham encouraged. Thanks. Sorry about... Just drink, you idiot! Abraham snapped, leaning down for her. Ashley nodded and grabbed hold of Abraham's neck, beginning to suck the blood. Abraham closed his eyes and winced, reminding himself repeatedly that this was for Asher. This was for Asher. They were alive and safe again because of Asher. So, what happens now? Christina asked. Michelle looked around her and then to Sarah. On the ground was the broken body of Tamil, lacking a head. Annie was crying and laying on her back in misery. Jelly was frozen solid with Alexander hugging her, trying to thaw her out. Penn was on the ground unconscious from being swatted like a bug. Ashley was latched onto Abraham's neck to suck his blood. Calypso, Katie, and David were supposedly outside trying to keep Calypso from dying from blood loss, and Sarah herself was leaning down next to Ashley to make sure she didn't overdo it on Abraham's blood. Abraham replied, We do what we've done since we started this dysfunctional family. We'll survive. We'll adapt, and we'll survive. So is this a win? Christina asked. No, Michelle whispered. Frankly, I don't think we can ever really win. Just live a little longer. Guess so. Let's clean up this mess and get out of here, please. Right. Yeah. It's over, Michelle answered. It's finally over. For now, Sarah muttered. But I guess we'll take it. I'll take a little bit of peace.
And that was Monster Club. It's not done yet. We still got a few more chapters to go, but that is the end of our reading of that tonight. And we have gone a little over, so let's go ahead and get on to the next portion. I'll go ahead and get the image up. You guys let me know what you thought of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know it was a lot. All right. Down to the last story of the night. Reanimated. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. We're on Reanimated Chapter 9. When Max finished her shower, she stepped out of the chilly bedroom and looked around. The lights were out and the air nipped her wet skin.
She wanted to bundle up in her towel, but it was also wet and provided little comfort. She looked to the large gossamer bed and saw a hoodie and a pair of cut jeans waiting for her. Had Gabriel set these out? She dropped the towel and got changed quickly. Surprisingly, they fit her rather well, and she went to the mirror across the room to adjust her hair. Under normal circumstances, the ritual preparation would take almost 15 minutes, but she was slowly beginning to learn that such carefree and mundane rituals were very dangerous in this hostile environment. Max finished getting her hair fixed up and went downstairs. "Gabriel, are you here?" she called.
"I'm in the den,"
Gabriel called back. Max stumbled down to the den, suddenly aware of how tired her legs were. Gabriel was lying on the sofa, staring up at the ceiling. He was lightly touching the sword in his hand. Next to his head was the book that he had earlier, the one that he stole from the hospital. "May I see that book?" Max asked. Gabriel glanced up at her and then looked at the book. "Why?" he asked. "I just want to see it." Gabriel sighed and looked at the book before tossing it to her. Max caught and realized just how heavy it was in her hands. It felt old, dry, and worn down. The bindings looked like they'd been around for far longer than they should have. She opened the book and instantly felt lost. "This isn't in English," she said in confusion. "No, it's ancient Greek," Gabriel sighed. "And you can read that?" Max asked. "Okay, now I know there's something going on with you." "Yeah, there is." "Well, tell me what it is." "Not right now," Gabriel snapped harshly. "Look, I'm tired. Why don't we save this conversation for in the morning?" "Not until you've gotten a shower. I could smell you from upstairs," Max teased. Rolling his eyes, Gabriel got up and stretched, his jacket slipping off his arm. It was in that instant that Max felt her body go cold. On his arm, where there should have been flesh, there was a bloody mark, much like that of a bite. Oh my God, your arm!" Max cried. Gabriel looked down quickly to try to cover it up. "No, hold on. It's not what you think. Put the gun down!" Max was on her feet, gun in hand, and her arms were trembling. "When were you going to tell me you'd been bitten?" "Just calm down. Put down the gun. I'm not going to hurt you." "Not yet, you're not. Not until you come back as one of those flesh-eating freaks," Max screamed through tears. "I've got to kill you. I'm sorry, Gabriel." "Please just listen to me. I'm not going to..." She fired. Gabriel fell to the ground with a thud, a bullet hole just above his left eye. He let out a single, solitary grunt of agony and then lay motionless. Max dropped the pistol in her hand, the weight of her own actions pushing her down. Falling to her tired knees, she didn't try to fight the tears as they rolled down her eyes, and she cried desperately. "Why?" she screamed. "Why is this happening to me?" She buried her face in her hands and bawled loudly. She longed for the comfort of her mother, for the comfort of Gabriel, but now he was gone, and she was all alone. In the deepest recesses of her mind, she could almost hear Gabriel's voice speaking to her again. "Damn it, woman, that fucking hurt!" Max let out a scream of shock and turned to see that Gabriel was sitting up, rubbing his head in pain. How? How was he alive? The bullet wound above his eye was still there and still dripping blood. But he was moving. "What are you? How are you still alive?" "That's what I was going to tell you," Gabriel moaned. "You can't kill me." But how?" Gabriel sighed and walked to the couch and sat down, covering up his bite mark again. "I was going to save it for in the morning, but I guess there's no point keeping it secret now. You've seen the truth, and now you deserve to know what it is." Gabriel leaned back and stared at the ceiling as Max watched him carefully, as if waiting for him to go mad and start watching her. "Okay. I was born in the year 513 in Constantinople." Upon saying the date, Max and Gabriel both went quiet. The quiet hush of the night blanketed them and made their air feel thin. Max could hardly breathe and could scarcely comprehend the magnitude of what she'd heard. "What?" Max demanded. "I told you back in the hospital, didn't I? The zombie virus had existed way back, predating the East Roman Empire. No one's sure how or where it started, but all we do know is that the worst outbreak was in the year 532 in Constantinople, or what you might know as the East Roman Empire." Max listened with unwavering attention. The words Gabriel spoke were dripping with lunacy and insanity, and yet she found herself clinging to every word. "Have you ever heard of something called the Nika riots?" Gabriel asked. "No. What are they?" "Well, historians say that it started at the Hippodrome during the chariot races in 532. The Emperor Justinian was in attendance, and the crowds began to shout and mock him, which eventually rose into an uproar and turned into a riot that lasted for a week and nearly caused the downfall of the empire as we knew it. But that isn't the case. That's just something that we made up to try to cover up the truth. In reality, there was no riot.
Only widespread panic as the first great zombie outbreak took the city by storm.
What?
We're not sure who initially had it first, but suddenly the crowd began to go into a frenzy, screaming and crying out as walking corpses began to attack and bite people. No one had seen anything like this before, so no one was prepared for it. The people blamed the emperor, as angry citizens do, and sieged his palace, demanding he stop the outbreak or he die along with it. But I don't know much about that stuff. After 5 days of that monstrosity, thousands were dead or dying, and the true history was stricken from the records. Better to speak of an all-out riot at a chariot race than admit that the great Constantinople was nearly toppled by an army of walking dead people. Gabriel sighed for a moment and continued. I was attacked on the 3rd day, and I was bitten on the shoulder by an infected zombie. My father rescued me and tried everything in his power to save me. He was highly regarded as a physician and a doctor. He believed that maybe he could discover a way to reverse the infection through medicinal herbs or some kind of treatment. He kept me alive, warding off my slow but gradual progression into infection. And at long last, he created some kind of medicine similar to what you doctors produce and give to me, praying it would save my life as I was beginning to show signs of turning. I don't know exactly what was in the herbs he gave me. I didn't bother asking.
And what happened? Max asked.
It worked, but not in the way my father wanted, Gabriel growled. The serum didn't destroy the virus, but it changed its function. The zombie virus attacks the brain, deteriorating it and killing the host. It then reinfects the brainstem, bringing motor functions back to the corpse and giving it only one directive, to become a vessel for the virus to spread. Gabriel looked at his hands as if they were the very zombies that he was talking about. But the herbs, or whatever it was he gave me, it gave the virus a new mission.
Mission?
A zombie is nothing but a physical representation of the virus. Not alive, but not dead, merely spreading. I'm the other extreme. My body is technically alive. I can breathe, eat, shit, and all those other things, but I can't die. Every time my body suffers a fatal ordeal, the virus automatically reanimates me. My body can't physically die. At the same time, my body regenerates any dead tissue within minutes. See? Gabriel pointed to the bullet wound on his head, and Max was amazed to see that it was already starting to close.
That's incredible!
You think so? Yeah, try living this way. Because there were a few side effects to being immortal. My pituitary gland was destroyed, which means I don't age or grow any more than I have at this point. Also, I am still technically infected, which means that while I'm just fine, I'm afraid that if my bodily fluids were transferred to someone else, like my blood or my spit, they might become zombies too.
But if your virus was altered, then maybe the virus would be altered in other people too. Maybe they wouldn't turn into zombies.
Well, if that's true, then that's even more of a reason not to pass it on, because I wouldn't condemn anyone to this kind of nightmare. You don't know what it's like, Max. Living this long without being able to just die. I had to watch my mother and my father grow old and die while I remained the same, and they couldn't understand why. I was there to see the fall of the Roman Empire, see the rise of Europe. I went to Asia and I saw the different dynasties of China, Korea, Japan, Mongolia. I went to Russia and made many friends in the icy north, but only watched them too to realize my curse. And when everyone finds out what I am.
Why haven't you told anyone about this?
Like I said, I've tried. In the past, I tried to convince many people of my curse, and they all thought it was some joke or some hoax. I challenged them to kill me so I could prove it. And that's when they called me crazy and ran away. Some did try. But the moment I got back to my feet, they'd run away screaming. Eventually, I just stopped trying, and I became a recluse. Ever since, I've traveled from place to place, following suspicions and rumors of zombie outbreaks, and killing as many of those sons of bitches as I can.
But why?
I don't know, okay? Maybe because I'm the only one who's immune. Maybe because I get some kind of satisfaction out of killing them. Like it's their fault that I'm this way. I don't know anymore. I don't know. But that's my story. Gabriel finished. Max was not sure how or what to respond with.
She felt like she'd been hit by a train, and that was only the half of it. Gabriel, the boy she trusted with her life this whole time, had been keeping an enormous secret from her. That he was not only infected, but that he'd been alive for centuries. An immune boy who could not age, could not die, and would live on eternally. Was it a blessing or a curse to be reanimated so frequently? I don't know what to say, Max muttered, still trying to handle this new information. Have you tried to die before? Yes. I've tried ways. Nothing works. I can only think of one thing that might kill me for good. He pointed to the bag that sat beside the sofa. The bag holding the vial of the vaccine. I believe that cure. That vaccine might be the only thing that can kill me. Is that why you're helping me get out of the city? So they can mass produce it and you can finally die? Gabriel buried his face in his hands and inhaled. Max, I know it sounds awful, but you need to try to understand. I've been alive longer than you can imagine. And everyone I've met or come to love has died while I've lived on. I'm constantly forgotten, tossed aside, and left to wander this planet as a homeless vagabond. I want to die. I want to die and just get it over with. I can't go on like this. And I'm too much of a coward to just do myself in. I just can't. Tears began flowing from his tired eyes. His deep gaze brimmed with fluid emotion. His lip quivered like a leaf. I can't watch the ones I love leave me again. I can't be forgotten all over again. Do you know why I live off the street and just go to different places? Because that way it's harder for people to know I exist. And that way I won't be forgotten by them. That's why I have to get out of the city. I have to get you out of the city and get that out. So that I don't have to watch you die too. At long last, the heart of stone that had weathered storms for almost 1,500 years shattered. Gabriel leaned into his hands and cried. He bawled like a baby, just like Max had when she'd shot him. He was alone. He felt isolated and forever cursed by his own life. Max felt nothing but pity for this poor warrior. Gabriel, I will never forget you. I promise I will never forget you. She sat beside the crying boy and wrapped her arms around him, hugging him gently as Gabriel continued to cry. Outside, the rain continued to pound on the window and roof, as if crying right along with them. The night was filled with a dead sadness. And I think we'll probably wrap it up there, guys. I know I only read one chapter of Reanimated, but kind of feel like we need to wrap it up there. That was kind of heavy, wasn't it? And I'm honestly getting tired of my throat starting to hurt. The Tomiki reading really wore my throat out. So I think I need to wrap it up there. We've got 3 more chapters of Reanimated to get through. So I'll try to wrap it up next time. I hope you guys enjoyed the reading tonight. We finally got through 2 very nice stories. We got through the Daikon arc of Tomiki. We are almost done with Monster Club, and we're almost done with Reanimated. Boy, I'm excited. I'm excited. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight, and as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.